On the plains of Montana, where the sky seems endless and the grass waves like a green ocean in the wind, there are stories that are passed down from generation to generation. Stories about brave men, about difficult choices, about times when doing the right thing meant risking everything. This is one of those stories, a story about honor, about respect, and about how a single act of integrity can change a man's destiny forever. The year was 1876, and Samuel Thornton was 29 years old. He was a cowboy like so many others who worked on the cattle ranches that were beginning to spread across the territory. Calloused hands, sunburned face, deep brown eyes that had seen a lot, but still retained a spark of kindness that hard life had failed to erase. Samuel worked for Farmer Henderson, a fat, ill-tempered man who treated his employees little better than he treated his cattle. The pay was miserable, the hours were long, and the work was brutal. But it was a job, and a job was hard to find in that forgotten corner of the world. That June morning, Samuel had been sent to check the fences on the north pasture, the most remote area of the Henderson property. It was a half-day trip on horseback, through rough terrain and poorly defined trails. Samuel didn't care. In fact, I liked these solitary missions. It was a chance to escape the other cowboys, their yelling and their crude jokes, and to spend a few hours with just your own thoughts and the sound of the wind in the grass. He was almost at the north pasture when he saw something that made him stop. 3 men on horseback in a ravine below the trail. They had their backs to Samuel, apparently unaware of his presence, and they were doing something with an animal that looked like a horse. Samuel frowned and dismounted silently. He tied his own horse to a bush and approached on foot, using the rocks for cover. Something about that scene didn't feel right, and he wanted to see better before revealing himself. When he got close enough to observe without being seen, he understood why his instincts had triggered an alarm. The 3 men were cowboys from the Henderson ranch. Samuel recognized them immediately: Jeb Crawford, Pete Mullins, and young Danny Tucker. They were known for being troublemakers, the kind of men who liked to cause trouble when they thought no one was looking, and what they were doing was clearly wrong. The horse they had was not just any horse. It was an extraordinary animal, the kind that would make any horse connoisseur hold their breath. A stallion black as night, with a white star on his forehead and long, muscular legs that promised speed and endurance. Its mane and tail were long and shiny, and even from a distance, Samuel could see that it was an animal of exceptional lineage. But the most revealing was the way the horse was decorated. Colorful feathers braided into the mane, traditional paintings on the sides, a buffalo skin blanket tied behind his back. That was an indigenous horse, a crow horse, by the looks of the decorations, and it was clear that it had not been sold or traded. There were rope marks around the animal's neck, and it was agitated, resisting the hands of the 3 men trying to remove the decorations. The 3 cowboys were laughing as they worked. Samuel could hear fragments of their conversation carried on the wind. Jeb Crawford was saying the horse would be worth a fortune in town, that no one would ask where it had come from, that they could sell it in the next county and no one would ever know. Pete Mullins agreed, already making plans for how they would spend the money. And Danny Tucker, the youngest of the 3, just laughed nervously, clearly uncomfortable, but not having the courage to disagree with the others. Samuel felt anger rise in his chest, not just because of the cruelty of the robbery, but because of the stupidity of it. Stealing horses from a Crow tribe was not just wrong. It was dangerous. The Crows were known as the best horse breeders in the entire land. His animals were legendary, coveted by farmers and soldiers throughout the region. And the Crow were equally known for not forgiving anyone who stole what belonged to them. If those 3 idiots were caught with that horse, it wouldn't be just them who would pay the price. The entire Henderson farm could face reprisals. All cowboys would be at risk. Samuel considered his options. He could just leave, pretend I hadn't seen anything. Continue to the north pasture, check the fences, and return as if nothing had happened. It was the safe option, the option that would not cause problems. But Samuel Thornton was not that kind of man. He came out from behind the rocks and walked down the slope toward the 3 cowboys. Jeb Crawford was the first to see it. His expression changed from surprise to irritation at a fraction of a second. Samuel asked what they were doing. Jeb replied that it was none of his business, that Samuel should mind his own business and leave others alone. Samuel said that stealing horses from Indians was everyone's problem. He said if the Crows came after that animal, it wouldn't just be Jeb who would pay. It would be all the cowboys on the farm. Pete Mullins approached menacingly. He said that Samuel should keep his mouth shut if he knew what was good for him. Samuel was not intimidated. He looked at the horse, which was still resisting the ropes that held it, and said he was going to take the animal back. Jeb laughed. He asked if Samuel had gone crazy. He said it was 3 against 1 and that Samuel had no chance if he decided to play the hero. Samuel knew Jeb was right about the numbers, but he also knew something Jeb didn't. He knew that ravine. He knew every rock, every bush, every escape route. He had passed by there dozens of times on his solitary missions. And he knew that, just a few meters away, There was a narrow passage between the rocks that led back to the main trail. If he managed to catch the horse and get to that pass, the three of them wouldn't be able to follow him. There was no room for three knights side by side, and their numerical advantage would be nullified. Samuel moved quickly. Before Jeb or Pete could react, he had cut the rope, holding the horse, and jumped onto the animal's back. The black stallion, sensing the change, took off like an arrow. Samuel leaned over the horse's neck and led him straight into the passage between the rocks. The three cowboys' angry shouts echoed behind him, followed by the sound of horses being hastily mounted. But it was too late. Samuel had already disappeared into the passage, and when Jeb, Pete, and Danny reached the entrance, they realized they couldn't follow. The passage was too narrow. Their mounts refused to enter. Samuel heard the curses lessen as he walked away. He knew he would be in trouble when he returned to the farm. Jeb Crawford was vindictive, and Pete Mullins was dangerous. But that was a problem for later. For now, he had a horse to return. The question was, return it to where? Samuel knew there was a Crow village somewhere to the north, beyond the hills that marked the edge of Henderson's territory. But I had never been there. I never had a reason to go. The ranch's cowboys avoided the natives, and the natives avoided the cowboys. It was a tacit agreement that kept the peace. But now Samuel needed to break that agreement. He rode north, following his instinct. The black stallion was extraordinary, responding to the slightest touch as if he could read Samuel's thoughts. It was clear that the animal had been trained by experienced hands, with patience and affection. It wasn't just a horse. It was a living work of art. Samuel wondered who it belonged to. To a warrior, probably. Or maybe a boss. A horse like that wouldn't belong to any ordinary person. He rode for hours, stopping only to let the horse drink from a stream. The sun passed from east to west, and shadows began to lengthen across the grass. That was when Samuel realized he was no longer alone. He didn't hear anything. He saw no obvious movement. But suddenly, I knew with absolute certainty that I was being watched. Samuel stopped the horse and looked around. The hills stretched out in all directions, seemingly deserted. But there was something in the air, a tension, a presence. He slowly raised his hands, showing that they were empty, and waited. The silence stretched for long minutes. Then, as if they had materialized out of nowhere, 3 knights appeared on top of a hill in front of him. They were Crow warriors. Samuel recognized the clothes, the paintings, the distinctive hairstyles. They were armed with bows and spears, and their faces were masks of distrust. Samuel remained motionless, his hands still raised. One of the warriors said something in a language Samuel didn't understand. His voice was hard, accusatory. Samuel responded in English, hoping that at least one of them would understand. He said he wasn't a thief. He said he had found the horse with men who had stolen it. He said he was trying to return it. The 3 warriors exchanged glances. One of them, the oldest, said something to the others. Then he looked at Samuel and spoke in heavily accented English. He asked why a white man would return a stolen horse. He said white men didn't do that. He said that white men stole and didn't give back. Samuel said that not all white men were equal. Said he wasn't a thief. He said doing the right thing was more important than skin color. The older warrior studied Samuel's face for a long moment. His eyes were sharp, assessing, searching for any sign of lies or deceit. Apparently he didn't find any. He did eyes a gesture to the other 2 warriors, who visibly relaxed their postures. Then he told Samuel to follow him. The Crow village was in a sheltered valley, surrounded by hills that offered natural defense against the icy winter winds and unwanted glances. It was larger than Samuel expected, with dozens of fur tents arranged in concentric circles around a central space. When Samuel entered the village, mounted on the black stallion and escorted by the 3 warriors, all activities stopped. Women who were working looked up. Men who were talking fell silent. Even the children stopped playing to observe the strange visitor. Samuel felt the weight of dozens of eyes on him. They weren't hostile looks exactly, but they weren't friendly either. They were looks of cautious curiosity, of someone who didn't know what to expect. The older warrior guided him to the center of the village, where a tent larger than the others stood. It was decorated with elaborate paintings that seemed to tell stories of hunts and battles. In front of the tent, a man was waiting. He was older than the warriors who had escorted Samuel, with graying hair tied into long braids and a face marked by decades of experience. But his eyes were young and alive, filled with a keen intelligence that assessed everything in fractions of a second. The boss? It had to be. Samuel dismounted and stood in front of the man, not knowing exactly what to do. Should I bow? Speak first? Wait to be approached? The older warrior who had escorted him approached the chief and spoke in a low voice, explaining the situation. The boss listened without interrupting, his eyes never leaving Samuel's face. When the warrior finished, the chief stepped forward. He spoke in English, his voice deep and measured. He said that the horse Samuel had brought belonged to his youngest son. He said it was a gift he had given the boy when he completed his warrior training. He said the horse had disappeared 2 days ago, and that warriors had been sent to find it. Samuel explained what had happened. He told about the 3 cowboys in the ravine, about what I had heard, about your decision to take the horse and return it. The boss listened silently. When Samuel finished, he was quiet for a long moment, apparently processing the information. Then he asked why. Why Samuel had done that. Why had he risked trouble with the other white men to return a horse that didn't belong to him? Samuel thought about the question. It was the same question the warriors on the hill had asked, the same question he had asked himself when he made the decision. The answer was simple. He said stealing was wrong. He said it didn't matter who stole or who was stolen from. Wrong was wrong. He said his father had taught him that when he was young, and it was a lesson he had never forgotten. The boss studied Samuel's face once again. Then, for the first time, something that looked like a smile touched his lips. He said that Samuel's father must have been a wise man. He said honor was a rare quality, especially in difficult times. He said Samuel had honored not only himself, but also the Crow people, by treating the horse with respect and bringing it back. He gestured, and a woman approached carrying a bowl of food. The chief offered it to Samuel, saying he must be hungry after the long journey. Samuel accepted, gratefully. While he was eating, the boss sat next to him, and they talked. The chief told about his people, about your traditions, about the importance of horses in their culture. For the Crow, horses were not just animals. They were partners, companions, family members. Samuel listened with genuine interest. He had never thought much about native people before. They were just part of the landscape. Distant figures he saw occasionally, but never truly knew. Now, sitting in the center of a Crow village, eating their food and listening to their stories, he realized how much he had missed by never getting closer. Night fell, and Samuel was invited to stay. A tent was prepared for him, with warm, comfortable furs. He slept better than he had in years, lulled by the sound of the wind on the grass and the occasional neighing of the horses in the nearby corrals. The next morning, Samuel prepared to leave. He thanked his boss for his hospitality and said he needed to go back. He knew there would be trouble waiting for him at the Henderson farm. The sooner he faced it, the better. The boss nodded, understanding. But before Samuel could mount, he stopped him. He said that Samuel had done something important. He said that an act of honor could not go unnoticed. He said the Crow had a way of recognizing those who treated them with respect. And he told Samuel to wait, that in 3 days he would understand. Samuel didn't know what that meant, but he thanked him and left. The trip back was uneventful, but the arrival at the Henderson farm was anything but. Jeb Crawford was waiting for him. The 3 cowboys had told Henderson a distorted version of the story. They said that Samuel had gone mad, attacked them for no reason, and stolen a valuable horse that they had found abandoned in the hills. Henderson, who had never liked Samuel, was furious. He said Samuel was fired. He said he didn't want thieves working for him. He said that Samuel had until the end of the day to collect his things and disappear. Samuel tried to explain the truth, but no one wanted to hear it. The other cowboys avoided his gaze, either out of fear of Jeb and Pete or because they really believed the false version. So Samuel did as Henderson told him. He gathered his few belongings, saddled his horse, and left. He had nowhere to go. He had no family in the region. He had no friends who could help him. All he had was his horse, his clothes, and a few coins that would barely cover a week's worth of food. But strangely, he wasn't angry, not even scared. Something inside him told him he had done the right thing, and that doing the right thing was never a mistake, even when it had difficult consequences. Samuel camped that night in a clearing a few hours from the farm. He lit a small fire, ate what little he had, and looked at the stars while thinking about what he would do next. Maybe he could go west, try his luck in the gold mines, or to the south where they said there was work on the railroads. Or maybe he could just keep riding, aimlessly, until he found somewhere that felt right. He fell asleep without having made a decision. On the morning of the 3rd day since leaving the Crow village, Samuel woke up to a sound he hadn't expected. Horses, lots of horses, approaching quickly. He jumped to his feet, his heart racing. For one terrible moment he thought it was Jeb and Pete coming for revenge, or perhaps soldiers after him on some trumped-up charge. But when the horsemen appeared on the horizon, Samuel saw that they were neither one thing nor the other. They were Crow, dozens of them, 50 at least, maybe more. Knights mounted on magnificent horses, wearing their best clothes, as if they were going to an important ceremony. At the front of the group, Samuel recognized the chief he had spoken to in the village. Samuel stood still, not knowing what to do, not knowing what that meant. The group stopped a few meters away from him. The riders formed a semicircle, their horses snorting and shaking their heads after the long ride. The chief dismounted and walked toward Samuel. His eyes were shining with something that looked like joy. He said he had promised that Samuel would understand in 3 days, and he said it was time to explain. The chief said that after Samuel had left, he had gathered the elders of the tribe to discuss what had happened. He said he had talked about the white man who had risked everything to return a horse that didn't belong to him, He said that the elders were impressed by the story, and he said they had made a decision. The Crow were known for rewarding those who treated them with honor. It was part of their tradition, part of who they were as a people. An act of respect deserved to be returned with respect. The chief made a gesture, and several warriors approached bearing gifts. Blankets woven with the most beautiful patterns, soft, well-crafted buffalo skins, weapons decorated with feathers and beads, quality tools that would last a lifetime. Samuel tried to protest. He said he hadn't done what he did expecting a reward. He said he didn't deserve all that. The boss smiled and said that was exactly why Samuel deserved it, but the gifts weren't everything. The chief made another gesture, and a young warrior approached, holding something in his hands. It was a necklace. Simple at first glance, but made with obvious care. Bone and turquoise beads woven into a pattern that seemed to tell a story. The boss explained that that necklace was a symbol of friendship between Samuel and the Crow people. Any member of the tribe who saw that necklace would know that Samuel was a friend, that he was trustworthy, that he was a man of honor. And there was more. The chief said he had heard about what had happened at the Henderson farm. His scouts observed everything that happened in the territory, and the news of Samuel's dismissal had reached the village quickly. He said that a man of honor should not be homeless, no purpose, no place to belong, and made an offer. In the land north of the village was a valley that the Crow used little. It was fertile, with abundant water and rich grass, perfect for raising cattle or horses. The chief said Samuel could use that voucher, could build a house there. You could create your own farm, not as another man's employee, as the owner of your own land. In return, the boss asked for only one thing. May Samuel continue to be the man he was, that he treated the Crow people with the same respect he had shown, that he was a neighbor, an ally, maybe even a friend. Samuel couldn't speak for a long moment. All I had hoped for in returning that horse was to do the right thing and move on. Never in his wildest dreams had he imagined anything like this. Finally, he found his voice. He said it would be an honor to accept the offer. He said he would do everything he could to be worthy of the trust they were placing in him. He said he would be the best neighbor the Crows had ever had. The boss smiled widely and extended his hand. Samuel squeezed her, and in that handshake, two worlds met. Two stories intertwined. Two futures merged into one. The following years were the best of Samuel Thornton's life. He built his farm in the valley the Crows had offered. He started small, with just a few horses and a few head of cattle, but with hard work and determination, the property grew, and he wasn't alone. The Crow kept their promise. When Samuel needed help building a barn, warriors showed up to help. When he needed advice on the land, elders shared their wisdom. When the winter was particularly harsh, Crow families brought food and supplies. In return, Samuel did the same. When the tribe needed tools that could only be purchased in the city, he brought them. When they needed someone to speak on their behalf to the white traders, he was there. When they simply needed a friend who treated them as equals, Samuel was that friend. The friendship between him and his boss deepened over time. They visited each other often, sharing meals and stories. Samuel learned words in Crow, and the chief improved his English. They discovered they had much more in common than anyone could have imagined. And the farm prospered. Samuel's horses became known throughout the land. He had learned breeding techniques from the Crows, who were the best horse breeders around. Their animals were strong, fast, and well-trained. Buyers came from far and wide to purchase them. With the money, Samuel expanded the farm, built a bigger house. He hired helpers who he treated with respect and paid fairly. He became known not only as a horse breeder, but as a man of integrity who could be trusted. Years later, Samuel got married. Her name was Elena, a teacher who had come from the east to teach at the newly built school in the nearest town. She was intelligent, kind, and had an insatiable curiosity about the world around her. When Samuel took her to meet his Crow friends, Elena was delighted. She asked questions about the culture, traditions, and history of the people. He listened with respect and genuine interest, and she was accepted by the Crow in the same way that Samuel had been. The marriage was celebrated twice, once at the town church, as per Elena's tradition, and once in the Crow village, according to the traditions of the people who had become family to Samuel. Samuel Thornton lived to be 81. His farm passed to his children, who passed it on to their children. The valley that Chief Crow had offered the young cowboy became home to generations of Thorntons, all raised with the same values that Samuel had learned and taught: honor, respect, integrity. The friendship between the Thorntons and the Crow lasted even longer. Even as the world around them changed, as reservations were created and borders were redrawn, that connection remained. A bridge between two peoples, built on the foundation of a single act of kindness. It is said that when Samuel was buried, representatives of the Crow tribe came to pay their respects. 50 horsemen, just like that day decades ago, when they had arrived to change the life of a young cowboy. They stood silently around the tomb, honoring a man who had honored his people. And they left a gift, an eagle feather, the highest symbol of respect in Crow culture. placed on Samuel Thornton's tombstone next to the flowers his children had brought. A final recognition of a friendship that had transcended borders, overcome prejudices, and lasted a lifetime. All because a cowboy had decided to do the right thing. This is the story of Samuel Thornton, an ordinary man who made an unusual choice. When he saw something wrong, he didn't turn his back. When he had the chance to do the right thing, he didn't hesitate. When he could have chosen the easy path, he chose the honorable path. And that choice changed everything. Not just for him, but for generations that came after, for two communities that have learned to trust each other, to a world made a little better because one man decided that honor was more important than convenience. Samuel did not know that day in the ravine that his decision would have such profound consequences. I didn't know that returning a stolen horse would lead to a friendship, a farm, a family, a legacy. He just knew that stealing was wrong. And that doing the right thing was always the right choice, regardless of the consequences. Sometimes that's all we need to know. The rest, life takes care of revealing. A horse returned. 3 days of waiting. 50 warriors on the horizon. And a life transformed forever. Because honor has that power. It opens doors we didn't even know existed. It creates connections that transcend differences. She plants seeds that bloom in times we cannot predict. Samuel Thornton returned a horse because it was the right thing to do. And the universe, in some mysterious way, reciprocated. As always, he reciprocates. When we do the right thing,